Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Science is now teaching us that all life is energy, and that energy is interconnected and interdependent. And in essence, we are all one. And spirituality and ancient wisdom has actually been teaching the truth of oneness for eons. And science is just now catching up with the quantum physics. Now, quantum physics is not even new science. This science is over 100 years old. So this is something I feel everyone on the planet should know by now. We should know that we are all one and we are all connected. And what you do to another person, you're literally doing to another aspect of yourself. And when mankind awakens to the universal truth of oneness, there will be peace on earth. Today's show topic is My Search for Christopher with Joe McQuillen. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Caroline. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much, Joe, for being my guest. I discovered Joe from the Kevin Moore show. I'm always on YouTube. I'm always searching YouTube. And I saw your show, your interview with Kevin Moore. And it just was so inspiring. You're another parent, a fellow parent that has a child in spirit. I know, and I know you know, your child isn't gone. So please share your journey with our listeners.
Thanks, Caroline, and my condolences to you. Even though we both know they're not gone, we'd much rather be abysmally ignorant to the subject and have our kids in front of us sharing a pizza or going to a ball game. But we can't unring that bell, and this is what we have. So. My journey began, Caroline, in the winter Christmas break of 2015, which led into early January 2016. My son was home from college with a bunch of his friends, and they all went up to a lake house in Wisconsin to kick up their heels for the last weekend before they all went back to school. And Sally and I were kind of relieved that they were doing that instead of running around in the city where they wouldn't get in any trouble and nobody be driving and they'd be in this bucolic, country setting where they could let down their hair and not get any trouble. And that's, at least that's what we thought. And right. So, they started the night out shooting pool. There was a dozen of them, by the way. They were all staying at this friend's lake house in Lake Beulah, Wisconsin. And they were all, shooting pool, drinking. Dozen kids, and they all came back after a night of rebel rousing, and they decided to come back to the place and shoot pool and continue the party back at the lake house. Well, right around 3 o'clock in the morning, Christopher and three of his friends went outside, saw a boathouse, as curious as 21-year-olds would be, and opened the door and saw some canoes. And four guys jumped in a three-man canoe with no life rafts, or no life vests. It was a perfect storm. It was a partially frozen lake. They'd been drinking too much. They all had layered clothing. They had unlaced, untied Timberland boots on, which they all called Tims, and paddled out. And I'm sure, roughhousing as they do, the canoe turned over and none of them made it back. I was at home the next morning waiting to watch a football game. I grew up in Buffalo, and so when Chris was in town, we'd watch a Bills game together. And I was texting saying, "Hey, where are you, buddy? It's almost kickoff, waiting for you." And I get a text from the young man whose parents owned the lake house and said, "Mr. McHugh, four of the boys are missing." So at that point, I grabbed the dog and jumped in the Jeep and started driving up to Wisconsin. About an hour and a half away, and halfway up I get a call that said it's no longer a search but a recovery, that all four boys had drowned. And I'm sure I went into shock. I had no idea what I was doing, but I continued to drive up, and there were things that had to be done. I walk into this setting where there are parents on one side crying and kids in a corner crying and police boats out on the lake and police everywhere. And in Wisconsin, you can't identify the physical body. My son's body was recovered first. And one of the boys was a dear friend of his that I knew, but because it was a big high school, they all knew each other, but some were closer than others, a couple of different friend groups. And so I didn't know any of the other parents, but my son was recovered first, and it wouldn't let me see his body, which wasn't pleasing news to me. But they showed me the photo of him, on the table with his Buffalo Bison's baseball jacket and Celtic cross around his neck and the shirt that he was wearing, and I knew it was him. But I also knew that he was gone. I knew that his spirit wasn't there. And so at that point, heartbroken, of course, just terribly heartbroken. I knew that I wasn't ready to accept a world devoid of Christopher, who I just adored. Yes. And that started me on what's been a 3.5-year search for where they went. Where did he go?
Yes.
Who's he with now? And to be honest with you, Caroline, if what I discovered was that this is all hooey, I just wanted to cross off the list. I didn't go in, thinking I'm going to put a Band-Aid on my broken heart by signing into somebody else's idea of what was next. So I'm a very hard-nosed kind of guy. I've been a car dealer 25 years and mortgage broker the last 10 years. I'm not somebody that you're going to pull the wool over on my eyes. But 16 years before this, I had seen a medium just on a bit of a lark or a spiritual quest, and it was fine. And the woman, she's a lovely gal, Nancy Myers, who's in Surprise, Arizona now. But I went and saw her, and she went through, the normal routine. I'm from a big Irish Catholic family, so there was a lot of family on the other side, uncles, aunts, mother, father,
right.
Siblings. And so she said, she mentioned a few things, but to be honest with you, there was no urgency because everybody had sort of died in order. My one brother took his life at 29 early, but there wasn't this longing or closeness that I felt. But at the end of the reading, she did say to me, she said, your dad's here, and he had a tough life, and he worked very hard, and he's telling you railroad, and he's showing me a caboose. Now, if you look over my shoulder, there's a railroad lantern on the bookshelf up there. And why that is that my dad was 40 years on the railroad. My grandfather was a railroader on my mom's side. My Uncle Bill was a railroader. All 5 boys in our family worked on the railroad during college. So we're a railroad family. That's how it defined us, right? So that's who we were.
Right.
And so she just said that. And that was it. No secrets to the universe. No, here's the winning lottery number. My old man, who I adored, was just telling me that he was on the other side, and he's there, and that he could connect with us.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was, nice to hear, and I shelved that and put it in the mental file cabinet. Now, 16 years later, when my son goes out on this lake and drowns, this came back to me and said, wait a minute, if my dad can communicate with me, then he's in a place that I'm sure my son is too, and he can. Right. So what do I got to do to find out? What do I got to do to figure this out? And that's what I started doing.
Right. Very good. Yes.
So I did. I contacted Nancy, the same medium from 16 years before.
Okay.
And she said, look, it's a little early. It's only been a few days, It's hard for spirit to transition and be able to connect at that, that recently. But right. She said, he is here, and he's sending you love. And she told me things during that first interview or that first reading that I wouldn't find out were factually true until I got the coroner's report from Wisconsin.
Okay.
So, she knew what happened. She knew how it happened. They were roughhousing. Somebody's laces got caught. It overturned. they couldn't get it righted. They were inebriated, and they all drowned. And so I knew now that this was a path that I could take. That he was able to communicate and come, and tell me his story and stay connected to me, which is what I wanted to hear. So I got a little more ambitious, and I started researching the other side. And what do you do? There's a funny book that I have right here. One of the first things I picked up, and it's called, Complete Idiot's Guide to Communicating with Spirits, right?
Yes.
And I'm a boots on the ground kind of guy. This was all brand new to me. I mean, I had 13 years of Catholic schooling, and so I believed in the next life, but I really didn't know what any of that meant. And I figured I better figure it out figure it out now if this is what I wanted.
Right. Yes. Well, I had 6 years of Catholic schooling, even though my family wasn't Catholic. I was sent to I was sent to Catholic school to get a better education in the mid '60s.
Yes.
So that's why I was sent to Catholic school. But I also, I think I had said to you, I shared with you before we started recording, I shared with you that I have a son on the other side in spirit, and Kyle has sent so much physical evidence that I actually share with people. I have his voice from spirit. I have images of him from spirit. Yeah, I have physical evidence. And he said to me recently that the physical evidence isn't for me, because I know he's okay. I know he's still with me, but to share with other people. That's why he's sending me so much physical evidence. But also, when I know several very, very good evidential mediums that have been guests on my show, and when it comes to time in the spirit world, well, it was first Einstein who said 100 years ago, time is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. So when it comes to time, I know some mediums will say it hasn't been enough time, but in essence, in the spirit realm, there is no time. And so time really doesn't play a factor there, because there has been many spirits that have communicated with their loved ones just after passing, just after crossing over.
You know what? And since then, I found out that there's some things happen right after crossing over.
Yes.
I'll tell you another thing Einstein said that I love. He said there are only two ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle. The other is though everything is a miracle.
I love that quote.
The greatest thinker of our time is telling us, think in terms of miracles, right?
Yes.
And he was a scientist. He was an educator. And so this isn't some, lace curtain, frilly mindset. This is based on science. Energy doesn't get destroyed. Energy continues. So absolutely, Chris sends me signs all the time. And, Caroline, I never expected to write a book. I never wanted to write a book. What I started doing was meeting with mediums, and first by phone and then in person. And I'll tell you a wonderful story after that.
Yes.
And I thought I was just accumulating data so that when I'm an old man, I'm sitting on a front porch rocking chair, I would have these notes to look back on and feel closer to my son. That's what I thought I was doing.
Right.
He had another thought. The Greeks used to say that man plans and gods laugh. And so Christopher had a plan for me. And basically what the plan was to help others, specifically parents who've lost kids, that think it's over, that think that love, that connection is done. And it's so far from it. And, and as you know, spirits are on the other side, wanting that connection and not being able to break through to mom and dad who have this traditional way of thinking that, that they're gone. And if there's anything that this is a mission for me, it's to let, other grieving, heartbroken parents, just like you and me, know that it's not over. Like I said at the beginning of this thing, it's never as good as that physical connect we had, that hug, that I love you. but it is there and it's strong. And I can feel hugs from my son. I hear him. I get messages from all the time. I haven't been given the gift yet of being able to see him visually as other mediums have. I'm not a medium.
Right.
You know, I'm pretty open, but I'm not a medium. And don't want to be honest with you, Caroline. I got enough going on.
Yes.
You know, I'm doing this to stay connected to my boy.
Yes.
And it's led me down this path of being an author and speaking. I'm speaking at a sold out up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, very close. And actually, I will stop at the lake to be drowned in the way home Saturday at All Souls Weekend and speaking to a group.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
And the people that I need to touch are the ones who've lost kids, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, a funny thing is Christopher drowned January in Wisconsin.
Right.
So it's pretty cold. I'm in the North Shore of Chicago.
Right.
So I found a graveyard, and his godfather and I found a place, Sacred Heart Cemetery. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Open 24 hours. So we went there, and it's pretty much sold out, but there's a back section that I just love. And there were six graves that were available. So we bought all 6 of them, his godfather and I. We figured we'd split them up later.
Right.
We bought 6, and the woman said, "Where do you want him buried?" And I looked, and remember, the ground is now covered in ice and snow.
Right.
So there was a little tree. I said, "Let's bury him next to the tree. That's on the end. That's nice." You know, you're not thinking straight. You're not.
Right.
You're not looking at all the angles. So that's where he was buried. God bless him. And as soon as one day the snow started to melt.
Yes.
He was buried next to another couple, the Sheridans, and it looked like he was their kid. Now they hadn't put the gravestone down yet because they couldn't do it to the ground soft, right?
Right. Right.
I went absolutely ballistic, Caroline. I got a hold of this woman, and she was babbling, and you know, she didn't want to leave her Lexus, is what she didn't want to do when she was selling me these graves. So I got a hold of her boss, and this guy, Bill, was a pretty good guy. And I ended up moving him over one grave.
Yes.
Now, they should have done it for free, but they did it for half price, so it's better than not.
Okay.
It was such a good move for me.
Yes,
it was exactly what I wanted.
Right.
So now there's a separation between him and the Sheridans, and I'll occupy that grave. I still own that grave. That'll be me.
Right.
And I hope they know I snore, so they're going to have to deal with it. And then Christopher, and then on the end, Sally will be on the other side. So it's kind of like how when he was a baby, he'd be between us, laying on the bed, which is a beautiful vision for me. So I went there the day I look up this guy, a local medium, great reviews. His name's Andrew Anderson, killer medium, Arlington Heights or Hoffman Estates, and so I look him up and I said, you know, I'm on this search. I want to now look at a medium who's looking at my son. So I want somebody who's clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. I want the whole. I want all the packages.
All the clairs,
I want all the clairs, the eclairs, you know. Yeah. And so I call him and I make an appointment. And I always leave an exit ramp, you know, where if I want to cancel, I can. So I make an appointment. And the day of that appointment, you know, was like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I was head into the office after that. And my schedule's my own. So I had ordered some shamrock seeds because we're Irish, and they had just moved them. This is June 28th, 2016. Okay. June 28th. So, you know, about 4 or 5 months after Christopher had dropped. So I ordered these shamrock seeds from Amazon. And before I left that morning, I said, I'm going to stop at the grave. I picked up a leather bracelet that was in a jewelry box that Christopher had given me when he was about 4. Oh, okay. Maybe 5, when we went to Disney World. And it said Dad on it and Goofy on the clasp. So I don't know if that was an indication of my parenting skills. But so I put that on. You know, it's the first time I put it on in 13 years. You know what I mean? And so I put that on, go to the grave to visit him before I go see Andrew. And I planted the shamrock seeds. I had a little hoe with me and planted the shamrock seed, placed them nice, and I had this thing on. And I drive out to see Andrew. And I go into his office, and he wants to see a picture of Chris. And then he looks at me and he said, you know, your son's here. He looks like Brad Pitt. He's beautiful. He also acknowledges that you're wearing the bracelet he gave you, which was under a cuff, by the way. And he said, he also acknowledges that you planted something at his grave this morning.
Wow.
Now, we're 5 minutes in, and he's giving me this evidence from my son, and he's looking over my shoulder, and he's communicating with him.
Yes.
Then he tells me, Chris is relieved that you celebrated his birthday the way you always did. We go to this one Japanese restaurant, which for the kids, and we did it on his birthday.
Yes.
He said he also acknowledges that you sent out balloons or lanterns on his birthday, which we did. We sent them up, and he was relieved, and he just wanted to know that he takes responsibility for what he did. It was a dumb mistake, that he's sorry he's putting you through this pain.
Yes.
And Andrew then said, your whole family was together yesterday celebrating or something last night or this morning. She said, what celebration is it? And I said, it was that day, June 29th, was Sally and my wedding anniversary.
Okay.
And so, I'm sorry, it was the 30th, because it was the night before was our anniversary. It was the 30th that we went and visited Andrew.
Okay.
So it was like, oh my gosh, So at this point in time, all doubt was erased that this is legit. There's no way. You can't Google this stuff. You can't look this up. When my dad came through 16 years ago,
yes,
it was 2000. It was before
yes,
Google searches. My old man was just a
yes,
good blue-collar guy, good family guy. There's nothing on him online. Look him up today and you can't find anything.
Right.
So I knew it was real, and now I just wanted more. And that, and I continued to work at it. And that's what I tell parents all the time, Caroline, too, is that, you got to go first. You got to start this.
yes,
if your cell reception's bad, go somewhere where it's better.
yes,
Right?
yes,
Right? Go out on a balcony, go out on a deck, go outside, whatever.
right,
And if it's important enough to you, you'll find a way to connect. You'll find a way to allow them to connect.
yes,
And initially it was all through mediums, and I still see mediums. I still see many of the ones that we'll talk about today.
right,
And like most mediums will tell you, you can't come every week. There's
right,
not that much difference in info, right?
right.
They're and the days of the charlatan are gone.
Yeah.
The internet, the way it is, these
Yes.
people can't survive if they aren't good at what they do. They're rated,
Right. Right.
So
right.
that was I would say what really clinched it for me, that there was no doubt. It went from a believing to a knowing.
Knowing, yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's what brings me so much joy, is because I know that life is eternal, and I know that he's still with us. So
Right.
I look at everything from the spiritual perspective. I look, like you said, yeah, it would be great. Like, one of the things my son and I love to do was we are Eagle. I live in Pennsylvania, in the Poconos.
Where?
In the Poconos. Yeah,
My brother Jerry, I had a belt,
okay.
an Indian bead belt from Mount Airy Lodge, when my brother Jerry, who's on the other side and
Yes.
he's come through,
Yes.
was there on his honeymoon, the Mount Airy Lodge.
And it used to be, the Poconos used to be the honeymoon capital of the
Sure.
world. Yes. So and this is where I raised my son. He was 6 years old when I bought our house here. And,
Nice.
but one of the things we love to do, I'm not a big sports fan, but he played football in high school.
So did I.
One of the things my son, we loved the Eagles, but we loved when the Eagles beat the Giants.
Yes.
So that was our thing. When
Yeah.
it was, anytime the Eagles was playing the Giants, we had to watch that together, and we loved doing that. So but there's so much. So I still watch the Eagles and the Giants, and I wear my jersey, and I know Kyle was right there. And when the Eagles won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, boy, I had a party, and I know Kyle was right there.
I know.
So, but to me, it just fills me up with so much joy knowing that they're not God. And it's the knowing, like you said, and that's what you want to share with other parents. I don't know if you've heard of the organization Helping Parents Heal.
Yeah, I actually did I did an appearance on the Helping Parents Here online.
Okay,
For
great.
a group, and I'm a big fan. And I go into the website. I'll go on Facebook before I start the day in the morning and go through things. And if they're interested, anybody that's watching this is interested, Kevin Moore's brilliant, and he did a series that he's doing now.
Yes.
traveling through the United States. They call us channelers.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, and mine was the first one that they did, and
Yes.
I was very flattered,
Yes.
and was very pleased at the result. There's 50,000 plus views. You know, I'm not a tech guy, but I think that's good.
That's excellent. That's wonderful. That's
so that
amazing.
That helps give the story. And it's funny. Christopher's grave has a charging buffalo on the bottom right-hand side. He was a big Bills fan. In college, they would fly the Bills flag, and he would stream the Bills game out of my, NFL package that I would buy. So, and he could have it in college, and then we'd talk during the game.
Right.
And so, it's funny because you think this is inconsequential on the other side, but one of the first times I saw this magnificent medium called Thomas John, who's well known, he's a Manhattan medium, one of those guys, right? And I was fortunate enough to see him in person, and the first thing I sat down, he looked at me and he said, "Why do I see Marv Levy? Why do I see Buffalo? What's with the Buffalo Bills?" Well, it was a big part of our lives, and it's a big part of our connection. And so that's just who your boy was, who my son is, and still on the other side. And he did tell me one time, talking about the Buffalo Bills, he said, "It doesn't matter to me. The reason it still matters to me is because it matters to you." So I believe this connection's still there, with that, and his love of what we loved. It's expanded, but it's still there.
It's definitely there. And I think it does bring, comfort to parents, especially parents. It brings comfort when they know and they have, they just have that connection, and they have, like, my first reading was gifted to me by one of my guests, who, I don't know if you've ever heard of Suzanne Giesman.
Sure, I did an interview with her. She wrote 2 books that I read.
Right.
She's brilliant.
She's amazing.
Steal the name of her book is Still Right Here.
Yes.
And I steal
say that all the time.
When I inscribe things on my book, I'll say your loved ones, your kids are still right here.
Right here, still right here. Yes.
I kind of stalked her until she interviewed me, because that's what Chris wanted. She said, "Why was that important that I interview you?" I said, "Because Chris told me to." Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I consider her a dear friend of mine. She was recommended. When I started my show, I didn't know what kind of guest I was going to have.
Right.
I was just inspired to start my show. And so another guest of mine recommended Suzanne in May of 2016. She was my guest. And I knew I wanted a reading, but I wasn't going to look for a medium. I was going to let that medium find me. And so after she was a guest on my show, I said, that's the medium for me. And she actually gifted me a reading on Kyle's birthday that year of 2016. Kyle is a Thanksgiving baby, and sometimes he's November 24th. And sometimes his birthday falls right on Thanksgiving Day. So that year, it fell right on Thanksgiving Day. And when she told me she was going to give me a reading on that day, I was like, but that's Thanksgiving. I don't want to take you away from your family. But she also channels Sanaya, her spirit guides.
Yes.
Sanaya, before I had even contacted her, Sanaya had told her, you're going to do a reading for a mom that has a son in spirit on Thanksgiving Day. So when she got my email, she knew it was me. So she was instructed to do that reading. And in that reading.
That's right. She told me she's going to do me one for Chris too. She told me.
Oh, okay. Awesome. She's amazing. Now, in that reading, here's the amazing thing that happened in that reading. Now, I had never heard of electronic voice phenomena, EVP. I had never heard of it. I had no clue what that was. She had heard of it because she's a medium, but she had never experienced it. It was in that reading where Kyle was trying to we were doing the reading in Zoom. She was recording with her really, really good audio recorder, and I was recording in Zoom. And as soon as she invited Kyle in, you heard this swooshing sound. Now, she heard it very loud and clear. I heard nothing live. And it kept happening. She said, "You don't hear that?" I said, "I don't hear a thing." And then, but when she sent me her audio recording, and 2 days later I listened to it, it's loud as day. So when you hear this, you can just like, how does she not hear it? Live, only she could hear it. When she was doing it live, only she could hear it. But if you listen really, really closely to all that swooshing, at one point you can actually hear Kyle's voice. And then
That's amazing.
What I did is I said, Suzanne, you have to go to this particular spot in the audio recording and listen. And when she heard it, she was like, holy, because this was the first time she had it. Now I see Suzanne whenever I go to an event. So I saw her a few months ago. So I asked her, has she had other EVPs since then? She said she's had about 8. But that reading with my son was her very first time getting EVP on the audio. So
I've tried. I tried EVP, and I went and saw a local medium here. It was a good gal.
Yes.
And I said, I didn't get anything. And she said, Chris said, that's not for him.
Okay.
I mean, they have, right? I wanted to pursue that.
Right.
And he wasn't up for it.
And I get it. See, Kyle, my son was so into electronics. And like I said, I had never heard of it. It had never happened to Suzanne before. So of course we were not trying to do EVP. It just, that was all Kyle. That was all Kyle. He's like, I'm going to talk, it was like, so that's true. Yes. So.
Well, why do they choose? I mean, Christopher comes through to me audibly, right? And I have this routine. It started first anniversary of his crossing over.
Right.
I'd get up in the morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. I thought it was because that's when he drowned. I've subsequently learned that between 3 and 4 spirits are very active. Mm-hmm. And I'll go into this is my home office, which was also his bedroom when he was a kid. So his spirit moves very freely here. And I would go in there and I would listen to meditation music, and I would light sage, I'd light candles, and started doing all these things. And I would feel close to him. And then on the anniversary, I picked up a pen and started writing messages he was giving me back, coming directly to me. And I wasn't sure what the heck this was going on.
Right.
And I wrote down exactly what he told me. It was like taking dictation. And people have said to me, ask him this. And I said, when we do that, when I'm with the medium, I'll ask questions. But we're doing this, I'm just taking dictation. He's telling me what's going on. It's like, to me, it's like a newsletter from the other side, right?
Awesome.
Now, I will tell you something very cool, Caroline. The kid who owned the lake house, his parents owned the lake house. I was mad. Now, no reason. I mean, it could have been in my basement, could have been in the backyard. It happened to have been at their lake house, but I needed to be mad at somebody, right? So I was mad at them. And so on the anniversary of the crossing, 3 o'clock in the morning, one of the messages he said to me was, Pop, he said, and one of the first meetings I had with Nancy Meyer, she said, he's calling you something, not just Dad, but it's like Pip or Pap or Pop. I go, yeah, you call me Pops. Yeah. And I'd say, and when we're kidding, when we're playing, it's Pops, and then serious Dad. So he would say, Pop, you got to let go of this resentment with Scotty. I loved him and he loved me. He was just being him. And I thought, sure, Chris, I'll let go of this resentment, for you. Besides, when will I ever need this, right?
Right.
Fast forward 12 hours. Now it's the anniversary of his crossing. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a text from a couple of his college buddies, his frat buddies. Right. And they've subsequently become family to all of us. Right. And they said, Mr. McHugh, can you swing by the grave? A few of us are going to meet here. Okay. And I was going to meet there later on that night with Sally for the first anniversary, maybe around sundown. It was around 3 o'clock. So I jumped in the car, grabbed the dog, put a cooler in the car with a cooler full of Gatorade and beer from hockey, and grabbed a box of cigars for the boys. And figured, a handful of us would sit around and honor Chris. Where I get there, there's 60 kids at the grave. They just kept coming. There was college friends, high school friends, grammar school friends. They were all there. It was impromptu. It wasn't we do it every year now, but now it's a plan. But then it was just impromptu. Wow. And when I got to the grave, one of the kids that came up to me with his eyes full of tears was his friend, Scotty. So not only was Chris foretelling me what was going to happen, he was preparing me that I could let go and just hug him and tell him I love him. it wasn't his fault. It could have been absolutely any place, any time. But I'm Irish. I need to blame somebody. You know what they say, Irish Alzheimer's is, where you forget everything but the grudges, So, but from that moment on, I was able to let go of that, and know that this kid was as heartbroken as everybody.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, that is so beautiful. Yes, yes, yes. That's so true. Because that's one of the things they do. I believe all the spirits, many, they when they're on the other side, they understand it is all about forgiveness. Because that was one of the things Kyle said to me. He said, "Mom, I know you already know this, but it is all about forgiveness."
Yeah, and love. He
And
said,
love.
he said, everything over here is, he said, the colors are vibrant. They're blues and these strong greens. I don't know what strong green means, but I wrote it down.
Right.
Blues and strong greens. He said, and the air is like love. It's like love air. And he said, you probably can't understand it until you cross over.
Yes, yes.
So, those are the messages. Those are the reasons that I knew it wasn't just me doing this to make myself feel better. Right. Because he would tell me things that, like, it wouldn't initiate with me, like forgiving, somebody who didn't need forgiving. Or he said to me, I know this scares you, getting this close to the other side. And he was wrong. And I thought, wow, he's wrong. That's excellent, because him being wrong is validating.
Right.
Right? And he said to me one time, months later, he said, life should be easier, like a canoe cutting through water. Now, my son died in a canoe. I would never use a canoe as an analogy, ever.
Right.
I won't set foot in a canoe. I don't like Wisconsin lakes. So for him to say that and me to write it down, it didn't come from me. Exactly. It came from the outside. It came from my son.
Exactly. Very true. Very true. And that's true. That's the reason the whole purpose of my show is the unconditional love, the unconditional forgiveness. And that comes from understanding that we truly are connected. There is no death. There truly isn't. I myself don't use the word death. I might use the word passing, but my best word is transition.
Mine's crossing over. Same thing.
Crossing over, transition, and we're all going to do it, and we're all still connected. We'll see them in the physical as it is over there, because it's not truly physical over there.
Right.
We were both talking about Albert Einstein. What really woke me up, and it was before Kyle's transition, was science. It was quantum physics. I had watched in 2007, I'd watched the documentary, What the Bleep, which was all about quantum physics. And what I believe spiritually is backed up by science. So that I take it from the science perspective. It's like, okay, if you don't believe in woo-woo and all this spirituality, look at the science.
What? It's absolutely brilliant. And I got to tell you, what made this very clear for me. There's a wonderful movie with Cuba Gooding Jr. and what's name Williams. It's called What Dreams May Come.
Oh, yes. Robin
Williams.
Yes.
And Robin Williams in this movie gets into a car wreck and transitions. And Cuba Gooding Jr. is his spirit guide.
Right.
And he's trying to explain to him how this works. And he said, the origin of the word body is from the Anglo-Saxon bodig, meaning abode, which is what the physical body is, a transient dwelling of the real self. Mm-hmm. Like you're in your house right now. You're in your house. That doesn't mean you are your house.
Exactly.
The house falls down. You get up and move out.
Yes.
That made it very clear to me that this is a temporary dwelling of our spirit.
Exactly.
And our spirit moves on to another temporary dwelling.
Yes. And that's exactly, I always refer to it as a car. I always say you have a car because it's like, I think of my body as a vehicle to get around in this reality. And I always say, I refer to it as a car. I have a car, but I am not my car.
That's exactly right.
We have a body, but we are not our body. And so my hope is to inspire others to understand that we are not our body. We are so much more. We are divine light. It's what we are. And we're just having these experiences, which are kind of like virtual realities, a movie, a play. And truly, when you, for me, my understanding at a deeper level is that we are creating it. And I know that, so a parent like us who has a child in spirit would say, but why would we create it? We did. I knew when Kyle transitioned that this was a soul plan that he and I had made for me to stay. I had work to do, and his time was to go. And I know that your son, my son, died of an illness, but your son transitioned as and we think, okay, that wasn't planned, but our spirit knows that was a plan. It was an option, because our soul plan is not a linear. It's like a spider web. Okay, you can turn this way or that way, and it's a spider. Our soul plan is a spider web.
We have exit points. Right?
Exactly.
I agree that we have exit points, and think of it as being on a highway, and you have different exits. You can exit 26A or 26B, right?
Exactly.
No, but you can't stay on that highway forever. Eventually, you have to take an exit.
Right.
I'll tell you a story. That when the first week after Christopher had transitioned me ground, I've been sober 34 years. I've been in recovery. So I'm not delusional. I've been in recovery, which has allowed me a connection with a loving God. And and I get on my knees every night, and I would say, thank you for my sobriety, thank you for my family. But when this happened, I get on my knees, and I'm bone weary every day, because you're doing details, you're picking up gravestones, you're picking up graves, you've got readings, you've got a mass to attend, you've got all of these details, funerals, having the body brought back from Wisconsin. It was constant. And my buddy Mike, his godfather, was with me every step of the way that week. But I'd get on my knees, and I'd hit my knees, and I'd say, thank you for my sobriety, thank you for my family, but you and I aren't good. I'm PO'd at you. You took my kid. Yeah. And the third night, after I said this, and I reprimanded God for taking my kid, I got in bed, and I got a download from God, and it said, I didn't take your son. His self-will and recklessness caused him to come home early. I welcomed him home. And remember, I lost a son too. So it was at that point that I knew God wasn't this chess master moving pieces around or punishing me for my past deeds. That Christopher's self-will tied into his life plan, and he transitioned. And so my belief and love for a loving higher power increased instead of decreased, because I knew God was the one that kept me upright while I went through this first week of left foot, right foot, getting everything done.
Yes. So true. So true. There's another book that was written by a parent whose son transitioned. This is in 1975. So this is long, long ago, long before the internet or any of that. Her name is Anne Pierre, and she wrote The Son Stephen Lives. The book, the name of her book is Stephen Lives. And in that book, he was 15 years old and he took his life. But she can also, like you can hear Christopher, she can also hear Stephen. And Stephen had said to her, Mom, it was my time. Within 3 years, I had several exit points. But within that 3 years, I would have gone by either suicide, an accident, or illness. But it's in their time. So the message that Stephen is given is that we all leave here in our time. Nobody leaves before their time.
Rebecca Rosen told me that Chris left early. Yes. But that if he didn't leave then, his soul contract was up the following year.
Okay, right. I think the exit point has like a 3-year wobble. You give or take 3 years. They have, and they can choose. Okay, their soul. When I say not them, not their conscious mind is not choosing, but their soul is choosing. Okay, this is your window. This is your 3-year window. Okay, you choose which way you're gonna go. But it's like, so we don't go nobody leaves this experience before our time. Even though we hear babies and little children leaving, this earthly realm, but it is just an experience that we came to experience. We did what we came to do. Now it's time for us to move on.
And you know what? We know, at least I will say, Sally and I know that there was this connection with a soul contract, because Sally, even during her eulogy, made reference to trying to hold Christopher, love Christopher, is like water running through your hands. Somehow we just always knew it was going to be short-lived. It was extremely valuable and a short expiration life, and that's not to say, by the way, everybody needs to understand, you and I lost kids, and we function, and we're giving back, and we're good parents, and we're good spouses or employees, whatever we are.
Right.
But don't for a minute think that we've healed our heart. There's a line from what we call Manchester by the Sea, where the woman lost kids, and she said, "My heart will be broken. It'll always stay broken." And that's what happens with us. Now, we can function,
right?
And there are moments of pure joy, glee, when I'm with, my kids and Sally and my dog, but the bottom line, we're always doing that, and our tools are better to adjust, but we're always doing that with a broken heart. Right. So when people stupidly say things like time heals all wounds, they haven't lost a kid, because that wound will never heal. And to be honest with you, Caroline, I don't want it to heal.
Right.
I have this intense love affair with my son on this side or the other. I was driving driving into the office this morning, and the Zach Brown band came on, the Margarita station, Jimmy Buffett station, was playing Chicken Fried, a song. Okay. And I remember Chris took William to a concert, his little brother, my son, and I started crying, and it's the dam burst, and for 10 minutes I cried and then pulled it together and went and did my thing.
Right.
But we'll always stay connected. And that pain that we have is a gift, letting us know that pain is directly proportionate to the love that we have for them.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I do agree. It's just, it will never, I don't think a minute goes by where I don't think about Kyle. I'm thinking about him all the time. And then it's, something will jog my memory of when he was in the hospital or something, and then but one of the things I did say to myself when Kyle transitioned, I'm not going to do the what ifs. No. What if this, what if that? I said, I told myself I'm not going to do that. I won't do that to myself. It is what it is. And I knew that everything, I knew it was a soul plan, and I knew everything was happening in perfect divine order, even though we don't know why. We don't know why our higher self, our souls, planned our life out this way. Right. But
it's over our pay grade. It's above our heads.
Yeah, but I do believe it's for our higher purpose, and it's for our highest good what we go through. And I know that's hard for a parent to hear, but we are here in this. It's like it's a temporary movie of our own creation, right. and we set from spirit. We set certain things to do. So sometimes these things nudge us. Like I might have never started this show, launched this show, which I know has helped many people. So that was my life's mission. Maybe
I would have never written a book.
Done that.
I would have never written a book.
Right. Exactly.
That's exactly right. I would have never written a book. This path was laid for me because of the result of what happened. If I could undo that, I'd undo it. But like I said earlier, you can't unring that bell. Right. This is what we're given. People say to me all the time, I'm so sorry for your loss. But I got to tell you, and I know you feel the same way.
Yes.
I'll say, look, I got the greatest gift. I had the greatest job in the world. I got to be Christopher's dad on this side for 21 years, right? And on the other side, the next round, I'll be his dad again too. Right. And I said, so when people say to me, I feel sorry for you, I'll say, look, you didn't get to be his dad. I feel sorry for you. You know, I'll take, if somebody came to me right now and said, you can only have them for 21 years on this side. It's going to be full of love, but it'll be really painful.
Right.
Or, you know, you can move on. I'd make that deal, you know, 7 days a week. Right?
Exactly.
Same reason I don't want him out of my life now, is he was a part of my life. And another thing is, you know, I'm 62. I'm not real old, but I'm certainly not young.
Mm-hmm.
But around in third, you know, and if God touched me on the shoulder, and I've got work to do, this book has to get out there.
Yes.
People got to hear this message.
Yes.
I still have 2 children, 23 and 20, to finish raising. A wonderful bride who's a therapist, helps lots of people.
Yes.
I have work to do on this side. But if God tapped me on the shoulder, Caroline, and said, time to go,
right,
I'm good. I lived a life beyond my wildest dreams.
yes.
And the minute I cross over,
right,
I get to be with Chris again.
yes,
Right?
yes.
So
yes.
I can't lose, kid.
Yes, yes, yes. And my last reading, I only have, because of Suzanne Giesman gifting me that reading on Kyle's birthday in 2016, I only have 1 reading a year, and it's usually either on his birthday or near his birthday. And in my last reading, I was told, Kyle told me, Mom, no rush, but I'll be here to show you around. He wants to give me a tour. I will call it heaven. Well, he wants to give me a tour of heaven when it's my time. So he's saying, like, Mom, it's no rush, but I'll be right here to give you a tour when it's your time.
Here it is. You and I have never talked, never compared notes, know nothing about each other than an email.
Right.
And I've gotten the same message from my son that said, Dad, the minute you cross over, I'll be here. And he said to me, the learning curve will be easier for you because of what I'm telling you now.
Yes.
Right? Now, my sister, who is his godmother, who I adored, she was just a source of love and security for me growing up, one of my older sisters. She was just amazing, Marcia. So Christopher's Aunt Marcia transitioned in January.
Okay.
And when she crossed over, Chris had said to me, leading up to it, Pop, I promise, the minute she crossed over, I'll be there.
Yes.
He said, so don't worry about that. And so when she crossed over, Chris said, and this is, once again, I never thought this through, so I know it's not me.
Right.
He said, you know, we were all there when Marcia crossed, meaning Jerry, Billy, Bobby, Pat, all the siblings were there when Marcia crossed.
Right.
He said, but then she had to go away somewhere because she died of cancer. And he said her body, she left her body behind with the cancer, but there was still trauma on her soul. So she had to go somewhere. Think of it as a spa.
Okay.
And she rejoined us, and she was even younger than when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
So I never thought of that. I never thought that we have to go and heal somewhere.
Yes.
It's not purgatory. It's not a judgment. We go to a car wash where this pain and trauma, this cancer is completely stripped from our soul.
Yes.
And he said when she comes back, she was younger than when I was a kid. I showed a picture of Andrew Anderson, of Chris and Marcia holding him when he was a little boy. Right. And Andrew said, Marcia's here with Chris.
Okay.
And he said, she's even younger than this picture. Now, he never knew of this conversation I had.
Right.
You know, but as a medium, he knew directly from Chris the conversation.
Yes.
You know, she said to me when she was getting ready to call it a day, she'd suffered for a few years and just had enough and said, no more treatments.
Right.
But it's time to go. And I was out there. She has 2 wonderful kids that dedicated their lives to her, and I was out there, you know, and she crossed a couple of days after I came back, and then I went back for the funeral. But I'd been out there, and she said to me one day in the hospital, she said, you know, Joey, you gave me the greatest gift. She said, I'm not afraid to die because I read your book. The next time I saw Andrew Anderson, this medium, he said, Marcia said, thanks for the greatest gift.
Wow.
You know, so you know, if you're keeping score, guys, it's about 200-0.
Yes.
That they're on the other side, they're involved in our lives.
Yes.
They communicate with us and they love us.
Yes, very, very true. Yes, I have heard of that, like what you said, like what Christopher described was like a spa. I've heard it described as kind of like a hospital sometimes, like when souls leave and they're very traumatic, and like even the ones that take their own lives, there's no such thing as purgatory or any of that. But because of the trauma that they went through, sometimes they need to they need to rest. I like the term spa better. I mean,
And I tell you what, it's exactly right, Caroline, because I think he used that term with me because it's a gentle, sweet, loving, comforting term, more than a hospital or a life review or anything.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that was Marcia using that term to tell Chris, I went to a spa.
Spa, yes.
And
and that is true. There is a spiritual spa that some of us need to go to when we cross. We like, whoa, that was a ride. I need a rest now, you know.
Right.
Yes.
No, the scars that this world leaves on us.
Yes.
You know, they shed them in that spa.
Yes. Yes.
You know, Manny Petty on the other side.
Yes. And I just love the spa. Yes. That's a beautiful way to think of it. But it's all love and light. It's like it's not like when, you know, I know when we both went to Catholic school, when you're taught about the hell and damnation, that's the part that never resonated with me. It never.
And that was never part of what the story was. You know, that's somebody trying to keep control of the masses by saying, if you don't follow our rules, if you eat fish on Fridays, if you do this, then you're going to suffer this. And the bottom line is, that's not the loving source you and I adhere to. You know?
Exactly. Yes. Unconditional love. And they say the Bible says God is love. God, and I always use the word unconditional love. God is. So it's like, you know, we're all his children. We're all, you know, and he, you know, when we go to the other side, we remember, we kind of come here and we forget who we really are. Right. But then we go back, and then it might take us some time, but once we're there, just surrounded by the love.
Yeah, one of the chapters I wrote in the book is called Iron Joe, and it's about my dad. He's a flawed man like everybody, but I knew my old man loved me. Yes. Right? And I knew he would never do anything to hurt me. You know, I was blessed with a father that loved me.
Yes.
So it's easy for me to have, you know, a heavenly father.
Yes.
And envision him with the same love that my dad had, but 1,000 times. You know, and so it's easy for me to accept that guy is the guy that, you know, it's his house that my son's at. It's his house that my dad's at. Yeah. My father's house, there are many rooms, right?
Yes.
That's what Christ said.
Yes. And also, you're a parent. I'm a parent. You have what, 3 children? I have 2. And no matter, our kids can misbehave. You know, they weren't always, Kyle was not a saint especially when he was growing up and always getting into things. You know, there's nothing our children can do where we're going to say, okay, you're going to be burning for eternity. Okay, really? That's not a loving parent.
And you know what? I was a bad kid. And my son was wild, and he got a little bit of that from his old man. But I was, you know, and I knew my parents loved me. There's a quote a woman gave me not long ago. I can't find out who the source of it is. But she said, the unassailable self-confidence that comes from a childhood insulated with love. And that's what I had. Even when my behavior wasn't acceptable, my parents wouldn't co-sign it. It wasn't acceptable. They didn't approve of me at times, but they always loved me. And so when I came back to the person that they wanted to be, it was such a relief to them. You know, I was a better version of myself. You know, and I think that allows us to go out in the world, and that's why, Caroline, people say to me, do you worry about people thinking you're a little off the reservation with this stuff? And I'd say, I don't care. You know, I was raised by the 10 kids, Irish Catholic, hooligans running around. Neighbors didn't like us, but we loved each other. And so my confidence is, if this isn't for you, that's okay. But I don't need your approval. You know, this is who I am. And one of the reasons Christopher keeps insisting that I'm a really good ambassador for this is that I don't look like I sign on to this thing. I don't talk like I'm part of this world. And, you know, with one foot in this world and one in the other. And he said, you know, so people can buy it from you when they might not buy it from others, you know. Exactly.
I agree with what you're saying 1,000%, because I feel the same way about me, because I start with science. I say, I tell people, okay, if it doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter, how you were raised, your culture, anything. The oneness, there's science, there's scientific evidence that we are literally all connected. We're all one. And so coming from me, I'm not a scientist, so I don't present this from a very scientific level. I present it from a very common sense level. And so I get that same message, that people can hear it from me that may not hear it from others, like from spiritual people or scientists. They may not hear that message, but since I'm just coming as a layman, as a lay person with no scientific background, but I understand the science, and I don't have a scientific background. That's what Spirit's saying. That's why I need to get that message out there, because more people, and the more people like us, like everyday people sharing this message, will touch those.
It's rare that there's people that somebody will introduce me, or somebody will tell me, talk about the book, and they'll look at you like you have 10 heads, and that's it's God bless. Move on. That's okay.
It's okay.
But the truth of the matter is 70%, Caroline, of the people have had some sort of metaphysical experience.
Yes.
So whether it's their grandfather coming to them in the sleep, a medium, feeling something, sensing something, 70%. That's a big percentage of people who have had that experience. So when people talking about the veil is thinning between our worlds, that's why it's so thin right now.
Yes.
It's rare that I don't talk to somebody and they'll start sharing their own experience, and it's like, and what helps them is that if a guy like me, right, can come out and talk about this, then they can too.
Exactly.
Then they're okay with it too.
Exactly. Well, I was just about to say, I think that number is even higher than 70%, because I think there's so many people afraid to share their experiences. One of the conferences I went to this year was the IONS conference, which is the International Association of Near-Death Experiences.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many people that have had near-death experiences, and many of them are afraid to share those experiences. So I think the higher is the number.
You're probably right. There's 20 people that cop to it. That'll admit to it. So 70% of the people do. Here's an experience. Christopher had 2 near-death experiences before he finally crossed. And one is he just flipped the car driving to work at a ranch at 6 o'clock in the morning and walked away unscratched. And another one, he fell down a 30-foot mine shaft while hiking in Havasupai in Arizona. 30 feet, fell down, landed on a ledge. He talked later on about a guy dressed in white down there keeping him company when he was waiting to be, before he was afraid of going into shock. And I just assumed he'd gone into shock. And later on, it was told to me that was his angel. There was an angel there, keeping him awake, keeping him cognizant before the air lifted him out. And so like a lot of things he did first before his old man. He skied out west before I did. He flew on a private jet before I did.
Wow.
And he had a near-death experience and experienced the existence of an angel, a number of years before he finally crossed over.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's something?
That is amazing. That is really wonderful. That's amazing. Joe, thank you so much for being my guest. Could you do me a favor? Could you please share with our listeners how they can connect with you online, and how they can find your book? Show us the book cover. Show us the book.
So, first thing is, the name of the book is My Search for Christopher on the Other Side.
That's great.
It's a wonderful book. It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. You can get it in print. Audible. I listen to a lot of books audibly. I download them. Yes. It's in Kindle. So look at Amazon. My name is Joe McQuillen. There's also there's also a website, mysearchforchristopher.com. Okay. So you could look that up online. My email is J as in Joseph, B as in boy, my last name, McQuillen, jbmcquillen@gmail.com. If you want to reach out, you want to send me an email, people send me emails, what medium should I talk to? Who should I do this? And to me, a good medium is like a good chef or a good baseball coach. It's just how it connects with you, right?
Yes,
but
exactly.
I think like anything else, some chefs are great, some are okay.
Right.
I don't think there are a lot of frauds out there, but I think there's really good ones and average ones and ones learning their trade, and some are amazing, so any questions, any concerns, just reach out and email me and I'll get back to you. And that's My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, Amazon. Get the book because it's a how-to book for dummies, just like me.
Well, I love that it's on Audible because that's how I like to listen.
Me too.
So I'm definitely going to be listening to the audio book of it. Yes.
You know what I love about this, Caroline? I'm a first-time author, right? Brand new at this. I had no control over who would read that book, The Talent.
Yeah.
And I was nervous when it came out, right? I knew the book was written exactly the way I speak, right?
Right.
But I was worried about the Audible. The guy who did it was phenomenal. The nuances, the way he speaks, I'm so comfortable. I was actually listening to it on the way here just to get comfortable that I'm going into that spirit world for this next hour before I have to get back in the real world and start doing stuff with money,
Well, I have to be honest with you. I have to tell, and I tell people this all the time, I don't separate the two. For me, it's all spirit. Because again, with the oneness, there's our spirit. This what we call the physical world, and I always say this. In 7th grade, my science teacher taught us there's nothing truly solid. When you put anything under a high-powered microscope, you see these tiny moving particles called atoms. And now science has proven within an atom, it's 99.999999% empty space. Yeah. So what the thing that we're calling physical, which appears physical to our limited senses, is actually empty space. So in truth, we are still in this physical form. We're still in spirit, but it's just a vibration is very low, and the frequency is very low, so it makes it appear very dense. But it's still spirit. So everything I do is spirit.
It's spirit, and you know something? When we connect, and this is something I learned. When we I meditate before I connect. I do all the things with the chakras and the crystals and the lighting candles to raise my energy level up to where they can lower their level enough and we can connect in the middle ground, right?
Exactly.
So I say to mom and dads out there, do your part. Find a thin place where you feel their spirit. Meditate, quiet the mind down, listen to meditation music, guided meditation to reach the other side, something so that you can raise your level enough that they can pick up the phone. You got to do your part. You got to do your part.
Exactly. That is so true. Thank you so
much. God
much.
bless. I had a wonderful conversation with you.
This has been an amazing hour. Thank you so much. And we are going to stay in contact because you are a first-time author. I'm working on becoming a first-time author.
Right.
So we're gonna stay in contact.
You bet. You know where to find me. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.